everyone. Welcome to The Rebuild. I'm one of your hosts, Tara Hoops, joined with Gary Winslet. And today we have an incredible guest joining us, Representative Brittany Pettersen. She represents Colorado's 7th District, elected to Congress in 2022, and previously served in both the Colorado House and State Senate, where she led on issues like education, mental health, equal pay, and support for working families. She's also one of the few young moms in Congress, bringing a deeply personal perspective to the challenges of raising a family today. We're so excited to have you. How are you?
Yes, I'm so excited to be here. I'm doing as good as you can be in these crazy times. How are you doing?
You kind of just summed it up. Every day I'm just like, just get through the end of the day.
I know,
It kind of
focus
seems,
on the issues we wish we were working on at the federal level, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's the importance of having state reps and even on the local level. So you completely nailed it. But I want to start us off on a recent piece that I wrote this week on our Substack, talking about young families and how they are actually delaying expanding their families. Some people on the right are saying people are not having kids anymore because this is a cultural issue. My argument was more so that it is financial. Of course, there are always many circumstances that add to the issue, but for me, affordability seems central. Housing costs, student debt, healthcare, especially childcare. Do you think these economic pressures are the big reasons why family formation is slowing, or do you think there might be larger factors at play? And what can we do to make it feel possible for people to feel secure to have a family?
Yeah, well, I mean, fundamentally, this is a choice that people should have. They should have access to birth control and reproductive health care to be able to choose if and when they want to start a family. And then we should have childcare and making sure that we're paid for doing the same job as our male counterparts and that we can actually afford as women and as families to take on having children. So I think that they look at this fundamentally in all of the wrong ways. And this is about giving us that choice is economic freedom, it's reproductive health care, and it's making sure that we can actually afford and have a place to send our kids where they're safe, where they can go for childcare and early childhood education and then education at large.
So you've talked pretty candidly about your own experiences bringing your newborn to Congress because there's no real accommodations for new parents. I super sympathize with that because I have a 6-year-old. And so I just remember always like juggling the work and the family stuff. My kid is actually watching Odd Squad on the other side of the room right now. I totally get it. I'm just curious, like, what reforms would you like to see both in Congress and in workplaces more broadly to make America more like family friendly? Does it mean like baby bonuses or paid family leave or a bigger child tax credit or something else? Like, what do you think would help make this easier for parents?
Well, first of all, in order to actually pass policies that are going to address the challenges that families face, we need people in Congress who understand what families are going through. So oftentimes it's not even, so many people are out of touch because of the money and background that they come from that is not reflective of most Americans. And especially not currently going through the difficulties that so many families face with lack of access to affordable childcare, with rising costs of housing and groceries and everything else. So I think it's really changing the systems so that it is more accessible. Part of that is making sure, the very small step that we were trying to make when I was pregnant, we were trying to pass a resolution to update our rules so that if you recently gave birth or if there's a medical reason while you're pregnant, so, you can't fly close to your due date, for example. So if you can have reasons for being away and having your vote represented remotely. That was a small step that we had overwhelming bipartisan support, and the speaker shut us down every step of the way, even though we forced a vote through a discharge petition. So that was a small step forward, but we need to change the way Congress is set up. Our schedule is not accessible for families. If you're expected to be in your district and also in DC to vote, there are ways that you can set that up where you're where you can maximize your time in DC and not be away from your family as much. So there's a lot of things that you can do to support people there that make it much more family friendly. Fundamentally, though, there are just people that don't think that individuals like me should serve in Congress. I should be home taking care of children. So I can't believe the backlash that I got online from right wing folks. You know this because you have gone through it, but you can't
Hmm.
nobody will take your kid when they're under 3 months old because of the liability issue. Plus, we were on a wait list for over 13 months as soon as I knew I was pregnant until my son Sam finally had a slot. So he had to go to Washington with me. Whatever I was doing, he was with me, whether that was spending 24 hours at the Capitol and sleeping overnight there to not miss votes. I mean, Sam was in it with me because there were no other options. And while I had unique challenges as a member of Congress, this is what families are going through every day. I don't even live in a childcare desert. And it took me that long to have a spot open up. So we need system changes in Congress. We need to pass paid family leave for folks. We need to make sure that women are paid their value. There's so much that we can do to invest in our kids, to
Hmm.
invest in regular people and reduce costs for working families that makes it more attainable to pursue starting a family.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about those slot constraints, because like every new parent I know goes through this. We went through it. You clearly went through it. Like everybody has this thing where it's like you apply to like 9 daycares, and you may get into like one of them. You may be on a long wait list. So I'm just like curious. What do you think we could do to maybe alleviate that a little bit?
Oh, there's a lot that we can do. So we took pandemic dollars when they were coming down federally. Thank goodness Democrats were in charge during that crisis, ultimately. And when I was in the state Senate, we were able to oversee massive amounts of federal dollars that were trying to keep services afloat, businesses afloat through such a challenging time. I was part of a bipartisan group that invested in the infrastructure and upfront costs of creating childcare facilities and meeting our regulatory standards, investing in workforce and loan forgiveness programs. We have really high standards for people who are going into early childhood education. So they have to come out with a degree and then we pay them nothing when they're there. So we need to incentivize people to go into these fields, and we need to also help support the education process and the costs of that. We also need to diversify and I'm getting a little in the weeds, I know, but we need to diversify the types of opportunities that we're creating. So the United Way in Colorado, it's a nonprofit. They go in and they actually train women in child desert areas on how to start their own child care center at their house, how to do that safely. And you're changing generations of opportunity. You're not only filling a local gap, you're creating these small business owners, you're changing the opportunities for their kids. So we need to look at friends, family, and neighbor program on how we actually develop that support system. But then we also need to invest in a big way. When you talk about the child's tax credit, that was the number one most effective thing that Congress has done to reduce childhood poverty. And so we need to make sure that that is permanent. They
Hmm.
just cut a bunch of taxes for the most wealthy individuals on the backs of working families. We need to make sure we're investing in regular people, and that would help families address rising costs. It would help them address childcare costs. And then I think we could get into, what we've done in Colorado is through taxes. And I think that we could do this as well. You would qualify universally to help with some assistance. So you could have, a match at the federal level, for example, to help people in the most vulnerable time when their family is the most likely to struggle financially and when it is the most expensive to support your needs to get your kid in a safe place and then you being able to actually go into the workforce.
You mentioned the One Big Beautiful Bill, which I still can't get over that name, but I really do find it shocking that it was just like a reverse Robin Hood. Like you just cut like our social safety net, taking away like health care and SNAP benefits. Like these are kids who are just hungry. And yet the
Yeah.
idea is that we need to lessen that so that the top 1% can get a larger tax break was like so like shocking to me that like I to this day I was so
While
confused why it
raising
wasn't.
taxes on imports.
Yeah, exactly. All while having tariff palooza every single day since April 2nd. And I sometimes worry that our messaging there, because it wasn't so concise and strict, it fell deaf on people's ears. Like I kind of wanted to ask you, like, obviously passing affordability policies is something that we're always going to need to do, and it should be a priority. Like all the I'm a big proponent of the child tax credit. Like that should be like a no-brainer. But what do we do to make sure like families actually like feel and trust the results that they're going to feel in their daily lives? Like what are like messaging ways that we can reach the average person to say like, hey, we Democrats did X, Y, and Z, and we want to be there to protect that while the GOP was off doing God knows what.
Yeah, I think it's the biggest challenge right now because these are, when it comes to issues, things that we represent and fight for are very popular. And you know, when I was in the legislature and the bread and butter issues that we worked on, the things that we would point to when we had split chambers that the Republicans would kill, we would point to, hey, this is what we would do for you if we were in charge. And ultimately, we were able to do that. And we delivered in very meaningful ways. I think that it's difficult because at the federal level, there is, these are complicated issues. We're talking about the things that we want to do to make a difference in people's lives, but we haven't had the opportunity to be in power for enough time to get enough done. I think that people could feel it. And then during the Biden administration, we infused dollars that saved our small businesses, that saved our economy, the quickest, strongest recovery in the world. And instead of hearing that, people, all they heard were Democrats, rising costs, Democrats, inflation. I mean, it was just consistent. They have very, very simple messages. And it stuck, and people forgot where we had come from and what we had overcome and how we got here. So we definitely have to do a better job at messaging. I think that when it comes to the thing that I get the most frustrated about is we talk a lot about paying their fair share of taxes. Okay, sure. But it's not just that. It is about what that means for people. It's not just about fairness. It's about what you do when you tax people, when you have a fair tax system. People like Elon Musk do not exist because the amount of wealth that that one person holds is should be impossible if you have a fair tax system that's investing back in each other. And what it means to reduce costs and increase opportunities for regular people. We've seen every single decade the opportunities that I had growing up continue to dwindle. And it's because of the priorities of the most wealthy individuals on the backs of working families. And it's going to get even worse. The big ugly bill is the largest wealth transfer from working class families to the most wealthy individuals in the history of the United States. It is unfathomable. So we need to talk about what it means to level the playing field, what it means when you have access to high quality schools, when you can send your kids to childcare at an affordable rate, when you don't have rising costs on groceries and everything else, when you're actually investing back in each other, it reduces costs, it increases opportunity, and it's about investing in housing and the things that you all talk about. So we need to get back to connecting why fair taxes matter to people's lives and how that reduces costs.
So you just mentioned housing, and earlier you had mentioned your time in the state legislature in Colorado. I kind of wanted to ask you about that because, we all know we need new housing, but anytime you try to do that, you get this like local opposition. I've read about some of these Colorado ski towns where the workers have to live 45 minutes an hour away because the locals with money don't want to see any new housing go up around them. And so I'm just curious, like, what are your thoughts on how we streamline housing production and get around some of these red tape barriers and NIMBYism to actually get more affordable housing built?
Well, the picture that you just painted couldn't exemplify more the growing inequality in this country. We have people throughout the rural parts of my district and throughout Colorado where, they have enormous homes that they might be in only 2 weeks out of the year and it stays vacant. People can't afford to put a roof over their head and live in that community where they work. And you have somebody who, many people who are holding homes that they barely visit. Couldn't be more reflective of how far off we are in this country. But I think that it's about bringing the incentives at the local level. It's about trying to build houses and invest in new technologies that can build them quicker and cheaper. I visited the first 3D printed home in Chaffee County. It's the first one in Colorado that was printed, and it's an example of what's possible as we're
Mhm.
in this new technological age and how we take advantage of that. But we also have a housing facility that tries to build houses like we
Yeah.
do cars. And so they do it inside a warehouse. They do it so you're not restricted by the weather and what's happening outside.
Mhm.
And they can actually do mass production of homes at a much cheaper rate. But they have regional restrictions because you can't take them over highways. You can't
Mm.
take them through mountain ranges. You have to build these things regionally, and they're very expensive to start. So we need to invest in things like that are going to bring massive amounts of houses here across the United States, the tax incentives for builders to build the type of homes that we need. And then we need carrots and sticks for local communities who don't want to address the needs of their community. So we're trying to work on legislation at the federal level, but it definitely, we're not doing enough at the federal level.
You mentioned manufactured housing, and Gary's eyes lit up. He recently
Yeah.
had a paper on manufactured housing. So,
Yeah.
Gary, if you'd love to give us an overview
Yeah,
of
I
this
mean,
great
so
piece.
so it's funny because mass timber works this way too, where you mostly do the manufacturing offsite, and then on-site you almost put it together like a Lego set. So there's a new mass timber apartment building that went up in Minneapolis last year that went up in under 3 months, which is just lightning compared to traditional construction techniques. So yeah, I'm actually really excited about some of these new housing technologies. I mean, technology like makes everything better over time, right? Why
Mhm.
can't it do the same thing to housing? Like our cars are better than they used to be. Why can't our houses also be like
Yeah.
better and cheaper to build?
And they look,
You know, right.
the place I was referring to in Chaffee County,
Mhm.
Fading West is a company. Their houses, they don't look like manufactured homes. They're beautiful. I would
Yeah.
love to live in one of those. I think it's a perception of what they would be in your community and being resistant to that, but they definitely don't have to be.
As we're being forward looking, discussing the future, it's something that comes to mind. We've talked about your son. I think you might have two sons. Is that correct?
Yes, I have a 5-year-old who just started kindergarten, and I have a 8-month-old. So Sam is the one that my 8-month-old that everybody saw me on the house floor with.
The star of the show.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, as you know, you're a freshman in Congress. You're seeing like the inner workings, like no one, like constituents don't ever see. What is something that you would like to see? You would want your son to see in the way that government works by the time he's grown up? What changes structurally, maybe even small, would you like to see happen in the next like 20 years or so?
Oh my gosh. Everything changing. I can't believe. Oh, I think, you know, my 5-year-old, I sometimes feel like I should be doing videos for constituents on trying to educate people about what's happening in Washington, because the conversations I have with him to update him about what's happening and why. And, uh, I feel like people need that one-on-one back to basics again, because it is
Hmm.
just such a disaster. I think that we're on the brink of another government shutdown right now. This is not the way that a superpower can continue to lead the world, continue to keep our country safe, address our urgent needs. My hope is that one day we can have a functioning government, that no matter who is in charge, we don't have these enormous pendulum swings, and that we can agree that there are functions of government that are very important, like keeping us safe, our national security, clean air, clean water, addressing rising healthcare costs, creating the incentives at the federal level to reduce costs for folks. I mean, I just, I'm so shocked every day at the amount of damage that is caused. That it's not like during the pandemic where we were dealing with something that we couldn't control, and
Hmm.
it was this terrible global pandemic that we had to get through, keep our country afloat. What we do to ourselves because of the dysfunction at the federal level, the amount of money that is invested elsewhere because the United States doesn't look stable anymore, the standing that we've lost in the world, and the economic impacts that the Republican chaos is going to cause has already caused. We already lost over 1 million jobs since January in our economy across the United States, and it's only going to get worse. These are all things that we did to ourselves. So, I mean, I hope we can do the basic functions of our jobs, and I hope that it takes much less than 20 years. And I have, of course, bigger aspirations, but if we could do that, we could actually focus on addressing those long-term challenges.
That's something that we joke about on the rebuild is like getting the basics to work again. Sometimes it feels like it's gone a bit too awry where we just like want to stop and make sure that our foundations are stable because right now it doesn't seem so. And as you keep building on unstable foundations, everything starts to crack even larger. And now you just have like this big muddled mess around you. So for the sake of our future generations, for the sake of my future life, I hope that some of the things that you said can actually come to fruition.
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe what a disaster we're seeing at the federal level and the impact that the economic pain that it's going to cause. So I think, you know, when I look back at my life during the 90s, like we had no debt, you know, we were doing pretty well. I look back at my childhood and no matter what individual struggles I had, our country was in a pretty good spot. I hope that we get to rebuild the middle class again. And it's with people who are struggling economically and with the lack of opportunity where you start to be ripe for extremism. And that's what we're seeing on the right and the left.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think we have time for one more question. So as our listeners are aware, the Rebuild is a Substack that focuses on how Democrats can get back to being the party that focuses on cost of living to help people who are struggling. So we always like to wrap up with a couple rapid fire questions. What is something you think is too expensive?
Don't say housing.
Diapers, formula,
Yeah.
definitely housing.
No, but I totally get it on the diapers and formula. I just remember how absurdly expensive a new baby felt. It was unbelievable.
Oh my gosh. And yeah, childcare. Our childcare costs almost as much as our mortgage.
It's incredible. I think people who don't have kids in daycare just don't. Yeah, it's incredible. What's an innovation that you believe is overrated?
An innovation that is overrated. Social media. I don't know. When I look at the damage being done in the algorithms, the extremism and the radicalization of individuals, I am really concerned about social media.
And then the last one. So I have this kind of unorthodox idea that it would be really great to get the federal government to put a moratorium on localities subsidizing big sports stadiums, because we know that the economics of it are terrible, but you feel stuck that the team's going to leave if you don't hand over billionaires all this money for their sports stadium. So I'm just wondering if you have any of those kinds of like sort of unorthodox policy ideas.
I think, I don't know. I'll have to think about that more. I don't know if it's necessarily...
It could be an absurd one, like nothing that you actually have to pass. We won't know when you do it.
Nothing's coming to mind at the moment.
My absurd policy idea is that when it comes to concert ticket sales, I think they should have access to either your Apple Music or your Spotify, and the people who listen to that artist the most should get priority in buying those tickets. This is someone who has PTSD of trying to go to the Eras tour, and it was like a bloodbath out there.
Oh, I bet. Well, something that we passed in Colorado, when we connect taxes to services, is that if you're asking to reduce taxes, you have to identify the top things that will be hit, top services, and it has people think about that tax cut. So I think that we should do that at every level of government. If you want a tax cut, you have to be able to communicate on the ballot about what that means for constituents when they're voting on it.
Oh, I like that. It leads to more transparency as well. Well, thank you again for meeting with us. This has been a great conversation. We're loving the work that you're doing, and we hope to see more of you. Thanks for making the time to be here.
Yes,
thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
For sure.